West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. I tied a pine in Rose's cantina, music would play and Polino would whirl. Blacker than night were the eyes of Polino, wicked and evil while casting a spell.
If I never make it back home, yes, it was meant to be. I've been sent by the Lord with a destiny. I'm chasing demons out of this land, under authority of God's right hand. And I've been down this road a time or two at least. And I'm not giving up for angel, man, nor beast, 'cause I'm a devil-chasing son of a gun. Ain't giving up till the good Lord comes back to get me and take me home. I'm part of God's army. Here we come.
Folks, here we are, Tom and Greg. Greg is the one from El Paso. And hey, that was my idea. Just throwing some homage out there to my friend Greg. How you doing tonight or this morning?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been a long, hot weekend. We're up in 15 plus days, past 100 and 105, and another, I don't know how many days to go, but surviving the weather and just moving forward.
Greg, I just appreciate you so much coming to hang out with us. Long-time friend of Through the Black. You go back years. You've been coming on to this show. And I talked to you 2 times in the last couple of days, and I was troubled and trying to figure out how to get you on here. And you said, let's just make it happen tonight. So we did. We're actually in 2 different days right now. You are still in Sunday, and I'm already moved on to Monday. But hey, we want to talk about this very important film, The Sound of Freedom. I'm not even sure where to begin, but we're going to get into it here in a minute. Let me begin here, though. Go Therefore conference, Greg. You and I are both going to be there. It's coming up in less than a month now. It's going to be Coach Dave, Pastor Mike, L.A. Marzulli, Derek and Sharon, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, David Heavener. You're going to be there. Pastor Casper is going to be there. And Kenny C. and some other friends. Vicky Joy, our friend and co-host from Through the Black. So it's going to be an amazing conference. I'm really excited about the presentation that I'm putting together and looking forward. I've already heard from some people that are going to be meeting us there, and lots of friends. Greg, looking forward to seeing you again twice in 1 year.
That's great.
So we're going to be there. Any comments about the Go Therefore conference?
Just going to be, it's a treat for me because I, got to get to see you again, and everybody that I've met before, Vicky Joy and Derek and Sharon and L.A. Marzulli and some other folks, and really want to meet some of the other people. I haven't met Pastor Casper before, but I want to nail him about some of the music stuff just for grins. I probably won't. I know he'll be busy, but I feel like this is just a treat for me to be there. I'm really been praying hard about the message I'm going to bring, which is going to be about how to fight legitimate spiritual warfare in the age that we're in. I know it's a topic that's talked about a lot, but I really want to nail down the raw reality of taking those spiritual principles and walking them out in the very real world of evil we're now in.
Amazing. There's going to be lots of great talks, speakers there, lots of great fellowship, and man, that's where all the cool stuff happens, is in the fellowship and meeting the people and networking. It feels so good to meet like-minded people and know that you're not alone. And we just see that. I've been going to conferences for 10 years, and I've seen that over and over. And you always meet somebody there like, man, I just found out about this, a couple months ago, and I heard about this conference and I showed up, and they're so happy to be there. And yeah, so good stuff. Can't wait to get back there. July 28th coming up. It'll be here before we know it, Greg. So, Greg, I heard about this movie for months. Well, I've heard about it for a while now, but I didn't understand the status of the movie. I heard they were making a movie, but I didn't realize this movie was finished a long time ago. And I talked to my friend Chris Taylor. I think he went to a screening in Las Vegas last year of this film, and he was telling me about it. And I'm like, well, when is the movie coming out? And nobody knows. Well, it's out. It's here. It came out this last week, and I've been trying to see it all week, and I was finally able to see it on Friday evening. So I saw the trailers, and I was just going to the movie just because I wanted to find out what the hype was. I'll be honest with you, I don't think the trailers do the film justice. Okay. I think they could have cut the trailer in a different way, and they could probably get a lot more people out. Of course, people are coming out. Okay. I think this movie just broke 40 million at the box office, and one day it beat what's supposed to be a blockbuster film, Indiana Jones, which is bombing at the box office right now. So, Greg, this film, and we can talk about the direction, we can talk about the story, we can talk about the acting, we can talk about the actors, and the cinematography, the music even of the film. There's so many aspects to this film that kind of shocked me that were very high caliber. Okay. And it just hits on all cylinders. So I think we're going to touch on all that tonight. But obviously, the number one thing is the exposure of this topic. Okay, getting out to the masses is what we like. And then also there's a little bit of controversy. There's some attacks. There's some things that are being said that are, many of them not true. And then some of these things, there's some guilt by association type things because of the background of the person of Tim Ballard, who Jim Caviezel's character is based on, and things like this. So there's a lot to talk about. Where do you think we should start?
I think we should start by getting people to understand that the power behind this movie is that everything that you see in there actually happened, and actually happens, and actually continues to happen. And so before we can get into, we'll get into all the nuts and bolts at some point, some that are important, some I think they're important, but other things I have to say, well, let's set that aside for now and say, from my standpoint, as somebody that's worked in this area since the mid 80s, the accuracy of it was visceral. I could feel it. I could taste it. I thought, this is it. This is what really happens. And all they're doing is shining a light and saying, folks, wake up. This is the world that we live in. And for that alone, it has incredible value. That one step, and it's only one step, is waking people up to the truth about this. There are other steps that need to happen along the way. You want to know what do we do now? There's going to be a danger of overkill, and then this is going to be the issue du jour, and then we move on to something else. But just for the value of people need to understand, if the sheer numbers they talk about are real, and I think they are, then this is a modern day Holocaust beyond anything we've ever seen. And it's still ongoing, and people need to know this is real. And by God's grace, whatever way we can, we need to try and stop it.
Greg, I look at this film, one way I look at it is planting a seed. We don't know what kind of soil these seeds are going to fall on. Okay. I think most people are going to leave the theater touched, moved, but not do anything. Okay. There are a lot of things that could be done. Maybe they don't know what to do. I agree that that one of the number one things is we need to make people aware of this. Okay. If people knew, I mean, your average American family man, and I don't know, I don't know what the number is. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but the numbers are high that participate in viewing pornography. Okay. People that sit in church pews, people that preach behind pulpits. Okay. Struggle with this. They have this stronghold in their life that need it broken. They need to repent. They need deliverance, from this. They are contributing to the demand. Okay. If we could eliminate the demand, then maybe that could have an effect on, slowing down the trafficking. The numbers that are shared in the movie, the statistics, and I think that's like in the end credits. They're things that you and I are familiar with. We've heard these numbers before. Some of them were, kind of new to me, but it's ongoing. And I guess it's shocking for me to understand that this is a growing problem. I feel like it should be a shrinking problem, but it's a growing problem, and more people are participating in not only the viewing of pornography and child pornography, but the sexual abuse and rape of children. And of course, Greg, we're seeing it come full circle because in the country where we live, there's a fight going on, a very public fight where people are getting frustrated because there are certain people that are trying to protect kids from being mutilated. And then there are others that are saying no, basically, and this is the time, I'm just kind of boiling it down here. No, we think these kids should be mutilated is basically what the fight is. So I'm talking about a lot here. And let's just talk about the movie. I want to say this. I think if you're listening to the sound of my voice, and if somebody has told you don't watch this movie for this reason or that reason, I am telling you very boldly, go see this movie. Don't listen to those people. I've seen the detractors. I've seen the accusations, and we're going to get into a few of them tonight. I haven't seen anything that is legit. Okay. I've looked at footage all day yesterday and all day today, and watched interviews and watched the detractors, and I've watched the actual YouTube page of the underground, what is it called, Operation Underground Railroad. And what I've seen is them sharing story after story of operations that they've run to rescue kids. Okay. And I'm writing a note here about one right now. So anyway, that I don't want to forget to tell. So, Greg, this film does such a good job right away. And because you and I know this, we probably figured out what was going on from the beginning the film started. And I saw some other reviews before I watched the movie, and they said that there were times in the film that people got emotional towards the end of the movie. I immediately got emotional at the beginning of the movie.
The very first second.
I was choking. I was holding back tears because I knew immediately what was going on. Okay. And I knew what was going to happen. Not because I seen spoilers, just because we know what happens in trafficking. Yes. Okay. And we're going to we want you guys to watch this movie and we're going to try to avoid spoilers, but there's things that we can talk about in the movie. So, what did you think about the Jim Caviezel portraying this this real life person who used to work for Homeland Security, Tim Ballard? What was your thought about that, Greg?
I think he got inside the skin of every one of us who have had to be involved in doing something about this. I mean, I remember, seeing the shots of Tim Ballard, and he's doing Homeland Security, and he's getting his initial wake up about just how bad this is, and he just wanted to vomit. He wanted to go home and hold his kids and cry. And Jim Caviezel handled that so well, because I'm like, yeah, I went through the very same things. I had those moments where I had to see things or witness things or whatever that I just, you can't ever tell anybody about, you can't ever unsee. And the way that he handled that was just really, he's all in. That's one thing I do know. I don't really care about a lot of the criticisms at this point. We'll touch on it some other time, whatever. He's all in. He's all in because he had that moment that so many of us had. And I've talked about this before. When I've worked with law enforcement over the years, there's a lot of people I've had to work with, some that weren't very pleasant, but they were willing to get the job done when it came down to it. And so for me, the big thing for me is understanding that Jim is a guy who would definitely, you can tell, he would give up anything to be able to rescue one of these kids. And I think those of us who have seen the raw sides of this have felt that. And so he did a great job. And back to something you said about people who are telling people not to go see the movie. I would say one thing, just as a caveat: if you're a survivor, I would pray very hard before you go see it, because it's just that brutally real that it does have a potential of, for those who have been through these traumas, it can unravel a lot of things. So the people I think that should be careful in seeing it, or maybe shouldn't, are those who are still traumatized by those things. But everybody else, I really wouldn't listen to these people telling you not to see it. We've lived as a church for so long in the last few decades in a bubble of success and, trying to make us feel good about ourselves. I'm not trying to be critical. I always tell people, I love the church. I am the church, as you are. We're all part of the body of Christ. But at some point, we need to be willing to face the real world, or we will be ineffective against we're not prepared to deal with this kind of evil. We have no idea how to confront this kind of, we have a hard enough time, as you and I both know, and Russ and everybody else, getting Christians to want to hear about spiritual warfare. 9 times out of 10, what we hear is, well, we don't want to glorify the devil. Jeremiah said, if you've run with the footmen and they've wearied you out, what are you going to do with the horses? What are you going to do when it's battle time? And so there's a cry of my heart in all this that, you need to go see something about people who are out there laying it all on a line just to save kids who have no hope unless somebody gets in there.
Yeah. And we don't need to feature this, but let me just read one of the comments here. And I'm not picking on this person, but I think I've seen a lot of this, so I want to mention this. It says, I don't trust the actor or the real life guy. I guess I would ask why. Where did you hear something? Do you know something personally about these guys? That you shouldn't trust them. So I mean, one of the things that people are posting are pictures of the actor covering his eye. And they're saying this is a reason not to trust him, which is ridiculous.
I think I did that when we started the show.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hate again.
Guys, we got to do better than this. Okay. Sometimes I feel like just doing all the signals and I don't even know what they are just to get it over with. Okay. So people can call me all those names or whatever. So I don't know why you don't trust the actor. I've watched enough interviews with him in the last couple of days to be convinced that he is legitimate. Greg, he legitimately cares about children. He wanted to do this film so he could spread the word, so he could expose this. Okay. And I believe the same thing about the real life guy, Tim Ballard, that he, even though my theology doesn't line up with his, okay, and I don't know if I want to call it theology, okay, because Mormonism is a cult, but even though he believes differently than I do, I believe that he sincerely wants to help kids, and he has put himself through a lot to do so. The scene in the movie where he is kind of watching this this material, and he has to write it down for the court record so it can be spoken in court, because you can't watch it. Okay, so this is his job, is to watch videos of children being raped. At one point, okay, this guy, and I watched the interview in real life. The first time that he did it, he basically saw these children are my kids. And this person that you don't trust, okay, that somebody, not only you, but there's a lot of people that say they don't trust him. Okay, I don't trust him when it comes to theology, but I trust him when it comes to rescuing kids because he's really good at it. Okay, he went home, or he went to his kid's school, sprung his kids out of school, and took them home and just held them so he could be near them after he watched that. He has every mark of a person that cares about children. So, Greg, we're going to get into this, but when a firefighter or a police officer comes, do we check what they believe before we let them rescue us, or before that we let them put the fire out?
No, and that's an important point, because when one of the difficulties for me when I first started doing the work I had, as a minister of the gospel, I had to go into law enforcement settings and teach things from a secular basis. I wasn't there to preach. I wasn't allowed to. But I was going to give them the equipment they needed to save a child potentially, or rescue a victim. So here's the deal. I'm not asking to have a Bible study or let this guy teach a Bible study.
Yeah.
I'm not. And I think that's where it's not like maybe something where a lot of people have a problem with The Chosen, me included, because the Mormon Church is so invested in that program, and that people got to work that out. That's a deal breaker for me, because I don't want anything being used as a platform. This movie is not being used as a platform for the Mormon Church. It's what it is. They're raising a lot of money so people can just go see the movie. And here's the question we need to ask, because, gosh, Tom, there's so many angles about this, but I get particularly on edge about people who make these decisions based on little things, like they see a hand sign, or there's a couple of, forgive me, because I know this is gonna bother some people. There's a couple of celebrity survivors out there who, for whatever reason, and whether their story is true or not, I say I don't believe half of what I'm hearing, and I've had to vet these things out for years to make, because in our work we couldn't afford to say, oh yeah, I think it's true, but I'm not going to check anything out. That's a dangerous thing to do. So when I hear people who are what I call celebrity survivors coming and accusing these people of being this and that, and accusing them of that, I just want to say, you know what? You just need to stop. We need to stop to listen to people. I want to hear from people who have a dog in the fight. I want to hear from people who have the blood and mud of real warfare on their shoes, that know what's what. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm not asking anybody to teach a Bible study for me. I'm saying I'm thankful for the work that they've done, and he's out doing this is what I tell the people that are so bent on criticizing us. Well, can you tell me exactly, like you said, it's like, well, can you tell me what is it that you're doing for these children? And this is a moment where I think we have to back up and say, and here's the other thing. What are these guys, if they're on the other side, man, they're really failing, because what do they have to win from this? Nothing. What?
Greg, they are the worst, aren't they? If they're on the Devil's team, the Devil would have kicked him out a long time ago. Like, you suck at, doing what you're doing.
Exactly. And that becomes another point where, listen, we're going to take it back into like a little bit of a time-bound arena, where when we first started to uncover satanic ritual abuse, and we first started to deal with human trafficking rings, they're called now, pedophile rings, whatever. When we dealt with that, we realized the whole scene had changed. There was like a moment in time where everything changed, where people came out of the woodwork to attack what we were doing, to attack survivors, that was one part of what they did, is to attack the messenger. That's always primary in a warfare situation. The second thing is they planted disinformation campaigns and had a whole bunch of people come in and say, that's not the truth, but I'll tell you what is. And they would bring all of this nonsense to the table that would make us not look credible. So I'm just urging people to be very careful of what you hear. There are groups. I mean, if the money is as big as they said, 3 years ago, I thought the top human trafficking number was 250 billion or $150 billion. And apparently it's $250 billion a year industry in trafficking of children. Listen, there's not a lot you can make. You can't make disappear or shut up with that kind of money. So the people that have the most to lose by this movie coming out are the trafficking rings. But they're going to be very careful about how they silence it. And part of it, Christians better be careful that we're not part of that program where we just spread unfounded rumors, because that's part of how they silence the message.
Greg, that's why I don't want to call out a couple people that I've seen. One of them is well known in our circle, who's basically warning people to not go see this movie, to not support Mormonism and this stuff. And I've looked at this post and my heart is broken, because there's over 150 comments saying, I'm so glad you told me this. Now I'm not going to go see the movie. And this is somebody that's made Christian films, that's worked, done a lot of, good stuff. Okay. And loves the Lord. I'll tell you, I've been watching the Operation Underground Railroad YouTube channel, and I'm going to continue to watch it because I'm learning things about how they do ops. Okay. What I'm not learning about is Mormonism. Okay. And I have no desire to learn anything about that except for how to minister to Mormons. Okay. But that's not what's going on there. All right. The accusations have come out that these guys are child abusers. This is crazy. I mean, this is like one of their top 5 tactics, Greg. They always say that about us. We've seen the accusations against Russ, and it went all the way to the courts, and Russ won in court. Okay. And accusations, we've all had accusations made about us. So it's like you said, we need to be careful that we're not part of that program to stop this movie, because it's real. It's out there. They don't want the movie out. The film was finished 5 years ago. Okay. And it's just now coming out because the powers that be, they don't want it out for obvious reasons. Could have made a lot of money on this film. Okay. I know that Netflix turned it down. I know that Amazon turned it down. And here we have, and maybe that's why a company like Angel Studios picked it up, because everybody else turned it down. I asked you yesterday, would we be talking about this if it was Lionsgate, that was putting out this film, which has put out horrible anti-Christian movies and all kinds of crazy stuff. But if it was some secular company putting out, we wouldn't have a problem with it. But a company that's connected to Mormonism We think we got to shut this down. And hey, yes, thank you, my friend. Everyone should see this film. I saw it in 2021 twice. I met Jim through a mutual friend, and I can tell you it's been a challenging ride for them. And yeah, I was mentioning that earlier. I don't know if I mentioned it live, but I was talking, I think behind the scenes. He went and saw this at a screening in Las Vegas. I remember him talking about it. He told me about it. So powerful film. I cannot recommend it enough, Greg. I think those are good disclaimers to throw on there. If you are a survivor, you might want to be careful. But it's done in a very gentle way. They take a very horrific topic and they present it in a very gentle way. By the way, the film is PG, okay? And Greg, what did you think of the actors in the film? And I want to ask about the child actors. I thought they were just amazing. I was blown away.
No, it was some of the best acting I've ever seen, and to get little children to do that, I mean, it's almost like just needed the touch of God, because I mean, I know they didn't know what the subject matter was probably most of the time, but you know, everything was as real as anything I've seen in a long time. There was one movie that I saw back in the 80s. It was about the horrific daycare abuse case in Florida that took place. And the movie, I can't remember the name of it offhand, but it was so well done, from the children to the adults, who captured what we're all afraid of looking at, what we're all afraid of feeling. And, the acting in it was just over the top. And I know I don't want to give up too much, but there's stuff that Jim Caviezel inserted himself just on the fly in that movie that was so powerful, that drove home really the message of this film, which is, if anyone's to hurt one of these little ones, let a millstone be tied around their neck and to be cast into the sea. I mean, that is very clearly what Jesus said. And I think Jim Caviezel nailed some of those moments in portraying how that comes across and how that's lived out when you get on the field. Having said that, I think this is probably a good point to say we're probably here's the danger point coming up on the movie. There's probably 3 or 4. So bear with me. One is the people will not go see it. 2 is people will say, don't go see it, and start attacking the messengers. The third thing is they'll get the wrong ideas about it and get all crazy about it. I heard somebody on TikTok, bless their heart. I mean, God love them. They're on TikTok tonight. He's like, this is the most important video I've ever made. And it's about this movie, The Sound of Freedom. You need to go see it. It's the most important video I've ever made. I haven't actually seen the film, but I'm like, okay, no. You just want some TikTok time. I appreciate it. But if you haven't seen the film, you probably need to not be talking about it. Go see the film. And then if you carry some stuff and some problems with it, then come back on it. But I don't want to talk to anybody who hasn't seen it, who thinks that they've made this judgment about it without seeing it.
Greg, a couple months ago, we talked about the movie Come Out in Jesus' Name. I have not seen that movie. I trust your, presentation of it, but I still haven't seen it. And I want to make my own judgment on the film. Okay. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to line up, you know what I'm saying, with what you're saying, but it's not fair for me to talk about it if I haven't seen it.
Right. And that's part of the what we need to avoid is talking about things. We need to speak from a standpoint of truth and not about what we don't know, but about what we do know. And the other danger I see coming up on this, the other 2 danger, I think it was, one is, and we're famous for this as human beings, not just Christians, but as human beings, this could very likely be the crisis of the year movie. that's going to stir people up and get them really hyped up about this deal. But will we be talking about it and doing something about it a year from now? That's questionable, because part of the nature of this kind of trauma is you're hit with it and you have to say, you either ignore it or you face it. But if you face it, it becomes overwhelming, and it's like, well, I'm glad I saw it, but I don't want to talk about that anymore. Or I hope we do something about it. And you go back into a place of denial because we don't want to believe that this is actually real. We see it in the movie and we're like, this is really real. But then you leave the movie and it's like almost like a denial thing takes place that says, yeah, it probably isn't anything I need to be concerned about. So what I'm saying is, my concern is this is a time when we can really get Christians particularly to wake up to what this is and to do something. So we need to look at it. What is it that we do about it? I know one thing we do have to be careful of, because every father, maybe a lot of mothers too, but I know most every father that's out there is going to watch this movie if they have kids and say, I just want to take out these people out in the back 40 and just get rid of them. That's a human response. As believers, we're not allowed that, because the Bible says that the wrath of men does not work the righteousness of God. And I've known of people who have taken this matter into their own hands and literally gone in and killed a bunch of people in one of these rings as a Christian. And they're going to be living and suffering with that for the rest of their lives. And so we need to be careful that we don't respond out of an emotional knee-jerk, well, this is the only way to stop these people. I mean, we had plenty of those back in the day when we were working pedophile cases. There was a guy that molested a 10-year-old kid, and the father showed up at the airport, who was a police officer, and just dropped him right in front of everybody with a gun. And that's not how, I don't believe that's how God wants us to handle it. How we do handle it, that's up for a discussion. I don't have all the answers, but I think it's something we need to have in place to give to people now that we've seen the movie, we need to tell people what we can do, every one of us individually, about it.
Greg, I'm glad you said that, but I want to come back at you, okay? And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I get that response, and I know you do too. In our flesh, right? We want to enact the vengeance of God and judge, jury, and executioner. We've seen this play out. We've seen. I'm thinking of the guy at the airport that hid in a phone booth and waited for the guy that either killed his daughter or whatever, came back and he came back and shot the guy because he was afraid he was going to get off. In America, we have a justice system. It's not perfect. We obviously we put this in God's hands, and I don't even want to. Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad you said what you said. I think it needs to be said. And I understand the frustration. We need to forge that anger with God's word, with God's love, with God's mercy, and remember that, but by the grace of God, there go I. So let's talk about this for a second. Greg, I don't know if you saw that interview that I sent over to you. If you saw the whole thing, it was kind of long. It was Jordan Peterson interviewing the actor, Jim Caviezel, and then the person he was portraying, Tim Ballard. And in the middle of that interview, Jordan Peterson did an explanation of why men do this and how they just kind of deviate towards children. And there's no way that I could do that justice, but I asked Katie to take that interview and put it into the show notes so you guys could watch it. Jordan Peterson, a brilliant mind, and somebody that really understands these things, broke it down really good, and he did a really good interview. And even Jim Caviezel just kind of mentioned, wow, this is the best interview I've ever had. I really like these questions that you're asking, because Jordan Peterson was he was kind of getting to some stuff that a lot of interviewers didn't get to. It's mostly surface stuff. How'd you make this movie? Blah, blah, blah. What's the budget? Blah, blah, blah. He got into some really, really deep stuff. So that link is in the show notes. Folks, if you don't trust these guys, I would challenge you to go watch the interviews of that they've done. There's a ton of press out there. And I even watched one with Mira Sorvino, who's done some goofy Hollywood stuff, but she played the wife, and she's been fighting human trafficking since 2004. And I've known about this. Her name's popped up as someone who has been involved in exposing it and things like this. And she played the wife of, can't remember what her name is, but basically Mrs. Ballard in the film. And she played a role in this because the Homeland Security guy, Tim Ballard, was kind of looking for a way out and looking for an excuse and saying, hey, I got responsibilities. I got to cash in on my pension and all these things. And she was convicted that he should rescue these kids. And he did so at great sacrifice. I just don't know how anybody and what's being said, and I hate to keep going back to this, Greg, but they're basically saying this guy is an evil man. I think he's a deceived man when it comes to religion, but to say that he's an evil man, he's no more evil than you or I.
Yeah, I've had a lot of working on editing and revising a book I'm putting out, and everything I'm in there, I'm having to nail down what's true and what isn't. And when it comes to things like this, I remember way back in the day, there were people that came out with these outlandish allegations. And I'm glad that you're not going to name some of the people that you know that are protesting the movie. There's a few names that I'm made a commitment to keep my mouth shut about naming anybody. But I think of these people, I'm like, there's something that's really missing there because so many outlandish things came out, and it was always like, just give me something. I will support what you're saying if you give me something to back up what you're saying. So people are saying, well, these guys are evil, and I'm like, well, bring something to the table and do it publicly and do it. What I want to say is let's sit down and face each other face to face. Especially, I know when Russ was coming under some accusations by these people, I'm like, Russ is my friend, and I know what he meant to you and everybody else. I'm like, lady, your mistake was to accuse somebody that I know 100% is on the right side, and you've just accused of something completely other. And so these attacks that come at people, it's hard for me to understand, and that's why I'm challenging people that are from that standpoint. Please take a step back, because you know why? There are larger issues at work here. And I'm going to segue just a little bit because it's really important. And somebody posted something about how do you keep from doing something if it was your child. I don't have all the answers to that question, but I know the scriptures say if you walk in the Spirit, you won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. A lot of this, and what we learned when we were doing this stuff, is we couldn't do anything unless we were walking in the Spirit, because we knew if we misstepped, it could cost somebody their life. It could create issues that we couldn't extract somebody. Here's one of the issues that maybe it needs to be a whole show at some point. The children, if the number of children are correct, and I believe it is, let's just forget about who Tim Ballard is, forget about Jim Caviezel. If the number of children who are being trafficked, particularly those that are involved in the sexual trading groups, the child pornography and all that, if those numbers are even a fragment of what they're saying, what do you think happens to them when they get to an age where they're no longer useful? Well, they're killed, they're sacrificed, they're traded to another group, maybe for slave labor somewhere, or that happens to a lot of kids in the sex trade business. They are burned out, drugged out, and they're deposited back on the streets, having been abused since they were little children. They're in the streets, they're on drugs. And I'm thinking, are we prepared as the church to open up our doors to that kind of damage that's been done on people? It's a real concern for me, Tom, at this point, because if we're going to say, yes, I'm going to do something, then the next thing is, Lord, what do you want me to do? And if God says, okay, pastor, whatever, open up your church and go reach these people, that's going to create all sorts of issues. But where else are they going to get the healing? Because as we all know, every one of those people, every one of those children not only needs to be rescued, but they need Jesus. And we're the hands and the feet of Jesus. And if we're going to get involved in this work, then we need to do an equal challenge to the body of Christ and say, educate yourself, but then be willing to pay the price. Jesus said, don't build the building unless you're going to pay the price. That price may be reaching out to people that are horribly unacceptable because they're so damaged. I think you understand what I'm saying. This is not a criticism of the church. It's a heart cry that says that's where it's got to become real for us. We can romanticize. Can I say it so it'll be understood? We can romanticize human trafficking. We can almost feel good about seeing a horrible movie because it appeals to our, lifetime movie. I feel bad. I feel I feel bad. I cried. Now I can go back to my regular life. We can't allow that to happen because the reality is we can't treat it that way. We have to be willing to say, I want to be able to do something, even if it's painful, even if it's costly, because those kids are out there. They're on streets all over America with nowhere to go.
Greg, how can we watch this? And I know that you and I can't, but how can we watch this movie and just go about business as usual and not do anything? I just don't know. Jesus is the only hope. Okay. And I just want to back you up in what you're saying about the involvement of the church and the need when we see the people out there. They're in our communities. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be trafficking in the way that we understand it from this film, because there's all kinds of ways that the devil traffics in the souls of humans. Okay, people that are used up, and tossed out like trash. And this is what we see the devil do. Okay. So if they're not trafficked by human traffickers, they're trafficked spiritually, by the enemy. And it's our job to give them hope. It's our job to give them Jesus. It's our job to love them. I agree with everything that you said. Greg, so many things to talk about this movie, and I feel real compelled, okay, just to boldly defend this film because of the attack and because of the attack from our own community. Again, I'm not going to name this person. I haven't commented on their page. I almost did, but it wouldn't be welcomed anyway. And I'm just shocked at the attack. So, and folks, I'm going to bring it up a couple more times before it's over, but this film, what they did was it was a composite. Okay. The film, from what I understand, wasn't from beginning to end a complete story. It was from beginning to end a composite of different stories and operations that they've done. Okay. To tell this story, they had to write a script and they had to make it make sense. That, they had to tell a story about human trafficking. So all the way through, it's pieces of different operations. And I questioned, as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, okay, is this part true? Is this part true? And as I was watching the interviews of Tim Ballard, I heard him explain how they pieced this thing together. Okay. So when you watch the beginning of the movie, it says based on a true story. Most biographies, that's exactly what they say. based on a true story, because it's very difficult to tell a story from beginning to end, unless you're making a documentary, and be accurate with it. So anyway, I mentioned that because that was one of the criticisms. But in this film, it was very pro-line, very professionally done. Can you say anything just about the directing, the editing, the music, that sort of thing? I thought it was incredible. Just the way that it just kind of flowed.
Yeah, it was. I think I don't know how long the movie was, maybe 2 hours, something like that.
A little over 2 hours, yeah.
It went by very fast because it just everything, all those elements, the music, the cinematography, everything pulled you in from the very beginning, and it's like put your seatbelt on, and you're not. The ride is over before you know it, and it was nothing. One of the things I appreciated about it, Tom, was none of it was gratuitous. None of it was like, let's show them the most ugly thing we can. There was none of that. What they showed was the tenderness of the father and of these children of his who were taken, and the fragility of these children. And there wasn't, and yet it didn't hold back from some of it. I remember one scene. They've had Manson movies back, in the day that was like based on a true story. And I grew up 2 miles from Manson. I'm like, this is bogus. They made up so much stuff. I don't know what's real, what's not. There wasn't that in this movie. It's like, yeah, that happened. It may be different situations, but even down to details that I think are potentially painful, but they're real. Like when they got the kids and they'd taken them all the way down to someplace in the middle of nowhere and pulled them out of the truck, and there was like 10 kids there, and the guy opened up the back trailer and he's going, you stink. Well, these kids have been in a trailer for God knows how many days back then. I mean, that's the reality. These kids have to be in these trucks and these boats, in feces and urine and animals and all that stuff. And I'm thankful that they left that detail in. That was not gratuitous.
Mm-hmm.
That was a moment where you looked at it and said, dear Jesus, just stop this.
That was one of the gritty details.
Real.
Yeah. And I recognized that at the time. I was like, wow, they are, they're not leaving, this stuff out. And it was just very carefully, crafted. This film was. There was a scene in the movie where one of the trafficking victims gets hit, but it gets cut. Okay. But I don't know what it was like in your theater. For me, I wanted to stand up at that moment. And there was a gasp in the theater when that happened.
Yeah.
People were moved, people were hurt. And, of course, it doesn't show this person getting punched in the face, but it cuts at just the right time. And, obviously, Hollywood, and turning, and just the acting in this film was amazing. The bad guys did a good job of being bad guys.
I appreciated the sleaze factor a great deal, because your standard pedophile living in the United States is Mr. Nice, and he was a good neighbor, and he was part of the community and loved our kids. But when you get to the purveyors of this stuff, when you get to the buyers and sellers, they are the most pernicious, wicked, sleazy characters you'd ever want to meet, and they really portrayed that very, very well.
Yeah. They did a good job casting this film, and it wasn't thrown together. So it was put together so thoughtfully. I just feel like this film is such a good vehicle for exposing this. And Greg's alarm clock's going off. So for exposing this issue. It was just masterfully done in so many ways, Greg. So yeah, and the music, you know, one of the scenes that I thought was really good, the way that they did it, was when all these rebels were singing around a campfire, and it just seems so realistic to me, and it was so gritty.
Yeah.
And you know, they went into this camp to try and rescue this kid, and they were way oh, hey, we're back. We disappeared for a
Yeah.
second.
Hang on just a second too.
So but anyway, so I've been mentioning about the kind of the behind the scenes stuff of the film. And if you go to Underground Railroad, what is it called? Operation Underground Railroad, you can see the videos of Tim Ballard there talking about the operations that he's done. And he mentioned, you know, Greg, this guy still goes on ops, okay? And he talked about recently he went to the Ukraine. I don't know what to do with this story, okay, for some obvious reasons, but he said that his wife told him that God was telling her that he needs to go to Ukraine. And he was like, okay, I don't really want to go over there because they're dropping bombs and stuff. And this was last year. And, you know, I'm not sure what to do with this. Well, he got a phone call the same day from Mel Gibson, and he got contacted to Mel through the actor Jim Caviezel. And Mel said, hey, I know you do this kind of work. I support and I sponsor children in the Ukraine, and I'm really concerned about them. Is there any way you can go over there, take a team over there? So he was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Ukraine. He went over there, and what they do, okay, this evil man, and I'm sorry to keep harping on this, this evil man, Tim Ballard, went to the Ukraine where they're dropping bombs, okay, and put himself in harm's way. And they look for situations like this in war, where children are vulnerable. That's where the child traffickers, prey on these kids. And they found child traffickers trying to take advantage of these vulnerabilities. And it led them to like 2 or 3 other countries in this operation. So I'm not sure what to do with that. Okay. His wife says, hey, it's impressed upon me for you to go to Ukraine. He gets a call the same day from Mel Gibson, the actor and director, to go. And he went and he exposed a child trafficking ring that went through 3 different countries. And it was connected to politicians in Holland, a political party. And I don't know if you saw that part, but kind of crazy. Any comments on just like the behind the scenes stuff that we're learning?
Well, it definitely tracks with some of the stuff that we've known for a long time, which is back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, when the internet just became the sewer of the world for pornography. All of the underage teen pornography was coming from the former Soviet Union, all of the Balkan states that had broken up, Romania, Hungary, Belarus, all of those. And a lot of it was being shuffled back and forth. Germany, Holland. There's a case, I think it was the Marc Dutroux case, which if you haven't looked at, it's just was one of the most horrendous pornography cases involving, snuff films and everything else back in that day. And it involved some of the most high politicians that there were. So yeah, whenever there's a war situation, that's where the enemy goes in and culls his next wave of victims. So obviously it's still going on. And Ukraine has come up before, and it's come up just recently as one of the hot trafficking spots because these kids are hungry. A lot of them have been rendered parentless because of the war. And these are real legit hot spots that need to be looked at. And at some point, And I think I'm going to watch all of this with a great deal of interest because, and I'm going to tell people, if you don't like Mel Gibson, okay. If you don't like Tim Ballard, okay. If you don't like Jim Caviezel, okay. Can you do something for me if you're a believer? Would you pray for them? Would you pray for them? Yeah, we want them to be saved. If I was on a trip with Jim Ballard, I'd be spending 2 or 3 hours talking to him about my Mormon family and how we got delivered from Mormonism. I guarantee you, legitimate discussions. But you know what? All these people have put themselves in a great deal of danger by doing what they're doing. And believe me, the other side's not going to take it lying down. Now, they may not come out subtly. I don't think they come out and try and assassinate, but there's many ways of them dealing with people who meddle in their affairs. And so we need to pray for these guys, because once this, it's very right that they named the internet the net, because it's a spider's web. It's a worldwide web. And the evil at the core of it is mainly fueled by this evil. Pornography and all the dark web stuff is there and has been from the very beginning. But when you ping the web and you try to just pull out some of the web, I don't know if you've ever done that with a spider you don't want to be around, but they're going to get on it just like that, because they're way over here and they got word that they're being messed with, and they are not going to allow that to happen. So we need to really pray for these guys that, regardless what you think about them, let's pray for them to stay safe, to come to Jesus, and to be able to continue to get kids out of the stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Greg, I say very boldly that these guys are heroes. And if you don't like the fact that Mormons are doing this, and you're a Christian, then step up and do something. If you're able. So, and I'm not trying to start a fight with anybody, but I'm really just kind of brokenhearted over the hatred, really. And I don't think a lot of these people have seen this film, and admittedly, many of them are like, "Well, I'm not going to watch it now because of the credibility of this person that has said these things." And I was shocked, Greg. Dude, I hate to say this, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it, because at one point Glenn Beck was involved. I'm not a big fan of Glenn Beck. Okay. And he financed one of these operations. In my opinion, for that reason, Glenn Beck is a hero too. He paid to have these kids saved. He's a deceived hero. And the comment from this person that I know through the internet, I'm just shocked, and I'm kind of giving this much information so people will know who it is without me saying it. But they said it's not likely that Glenn Beck will get saved, because somebody said pray for Glenn Beck, and he said, you know what, it's not likely that Glenn Beck will be saved. And I was shocked that this person said this. Who says that? That's a Christian that believes in the transforming power of Jesus Christ.
Almost sounds like they don't want him to be or something.
Yeah. Mormons are getting saved all the time.
All the time.
I never turn a Mormon away that comes to my door.
And, that's like I said, coming from that background, I've got thousands of relatives in Salt Lake City. My family was way high up in the big operations throughout the Mormon church, all the way back to Brigham Young. I can never talk to any of them by virtue of me being a non-Mormon, because we are what the hierarchy calls Gentile dogs. Okay, I understand that. That does not limit my compassion for my flesh and blood. Why wouldn't I want them to get saved? I want them to get saved. I'd love Glenn Beck to get saved.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
I'm the guy that wants Marilyn Manson to be saved, so folks can deal with that too.
Yeah.
God's not willing that any should perish. So yeah, it's disturbing, and I think we cannot afford to be distracted. Is it an important issue? Yes, but separate issue. This is a separate issue from what we're talking about. We're not talking about, I don't accept the Mormon doctrine. I don't accept the Book of Mormon. I don't, not one little bit of it. We're talking about the rescue of children, and I don't have to agree with the person's religious beliefs at that point. If we're in the middle of trying to save a kid, what am I going to do? Get in a foxhole and say, I'm sorry, I can't work with you? No. I mean, if we're about to grab a kid, say, grab them.
You know, I'll tell you, if there's a Mormon doctor that can operate on me and save my life, I will pick the doctor that's best qualified over a Christian doctor who can pray over my dead body. Okay. So I guess I just don't understand what the controversy or what the hate is, but Greg, I think this is an excellent movie. I think people need to watch it. I am just trying to reason with anybody out there that has made their mind up or thought, hey, I'm not going to watch this movie because of where this money's going. I don't see any proselytizing, not even on the Operation Underground Railroad. These guys are doing active ops, okay, saving babies, and I hope they get all the money they need to save as many children as possible, because this is a growing problem. It's not shrinking. And I guess I want to mention the film that came out a few years ago called Eyes of the Devil. I don't know if anybody's seen this movie, but this is another example of trafficking children. I'm not going to go into a lot of that, but you can find that out there. Man, what was that guy that made that film? The whole film is subtitled, but it's basically about babies and toddlers being used in sex.
I remember that now.
Yeah. So if you can't handle, this movie here, by the way, the guy that made Eyes of the Devil is he's not a Mormon or a Christian or anything, I don't think, but he's exposing these things. He did a great job on exposing, that film, the stuff in that film. So anyway, but Greg, so many things to mention, so many things to talk about. I want to get some final thoughts on this film. I want to mention one more thing real quick I just thought of. In that interview with Jordan Peterson, right at the beginning of the interview, Tim mentions satanic ritual abuse. So he's aware of it, which that shocked me when he said that, because people don't know about this, or people don't want to talk about it, but he had no problems bringing it up in that interview with Jordan Peterson, which was amazing. And obviously it's not covered in the movie. They can't cover everything in the movie. Okay. And that's a can of worms that you want to be careful how you open it. Okay. If you can't, explain the whole thing. So anyway, there were complaints about that. Well, if he's legit, then he would have brought up satanic ritual abuse or whatever. Just because it's not brought up doesn't make him, not legit. So, Greg, you're going to be in Ohio at the end of this month. You are not only an investigator, you're not only an advocate for the victims, an author on these things, wrote a book, The Color of Pain, okay, on how to minister to boys that have been abused, your own story, okay, Nobody's Angel. Your story is in our film, Detestable, okay? We shot that, man. Can you believe that's been 7 years ago?
You can't. That's
so crazy. And just War of the Ages is another book. You're working on a book right now that we are pretty confident is going to be out this fall. So I don't know if I was allowed to say that or not. But,
you bet.
yeah. And Yeah, well, you are. It's no secret you're working on a book right now, and that will be revealed later. Some things that you've been working on that are actually already out and coming out is a music project, Stranger to This Place. And is there anything you could share about this? We talked about this whole album and shared excerpts from it. And you can go back in our archives and watch that show because we play a lot of music from it. I want you to check out this album, and it's just really, this album is really the heart of Greg Reid. But can you share anything about the album? And people have been wanting to know if they can get a hard copy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we'll be the CDs will be available probably. I'm thinking they should get here hopefully within the next 2 weeks, or we'll be in trouble for the conference. But
Yeah.
they should be here. I'm thinking by the 15th we should have them. But definitely by the end of July we'll have them. It's a good CD package. Tom, thank you so much for helping with the project, because Tom helped me put the package together, and it's beautiful. It's got notes. It's got photographs. And it's just this was an album of songs that most of them came from a place of brokenness before God, reaching out to God and receiving his healing for the heart. And I think it's going to do that for a lot of people. So I'm really glad I got to work on that. And kudos again to my great friend Danny Pelfrey for doing an orchestration that is just second to none.
Folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, go back. It's one of the last shows we did with Greg. We talked about this album in great length. And I tell you what, I had a lot of fun doing the layout for this because Greg and I were kind of negotiating what's it going to look like, how much we're going to put in, how can we save money in this. And he's like, this is what I want. And man, the explanation of the songs is so key. Okay, you get to the heart of the song. So this CD, when it comes out, is going to be just a great witnessing package, okay, for people to listen to the music and then see the inspiration in the story behind the song. So it's I'm really excited for people to see this and get a hold of this. So yeah, it's on its way, and yeah, check it out. All of Greg's books, his links are in the show notes, folks. You can get over to his website directly by clicking below. Of course, Through the Black is our website. And I mentioned the movie that Greg is in. A lot of you guys don't know. This is a film about satanic ritual abuse. It's not for the faint of heart. We did this a while ago, and it is still relevant to this very day, and the information in it is still good. And yeah, if anybody wants that, you can check it out on our website. Greg, any final thoughts on the things that we talked about so much, and my heart was just not at peace. Even at church this morning, I couldn't focus on what was being said. And I was just so upset at the attack on the film through what we would call like almost guilt by association, well, this person did this. And then also the false accusation. One of the accusations I heard was Tim Ballard was stealing babies in Haiti for Hillary. No evidence, but somebody said this just because they connected, these things. So, guilt by association is a really unhealthy thing. What if we spoke at a conference, Greg, where one of the speakers went nuts and he joined a cult or started a cult? They would say, well, Greg and Tom were at a conference with that guy, so they must be just like that guy, right?
Yeah, had those accusations too over the years, and I've been in conferences. I mean, I've done law enforcement conferences with a guy that was totally against everything that we were teaching. It's like, well, that was him and this is me, and you'll have to figure out for yourself what's true and what's not. But I, like you, I'm troubled by the knee-jerk reaction, particularly from people who I'm not that kind of person that wants to say, you know, I want to make sure what all your credentials, what school you did go to, how many college degrees. Well, I'm not about that. But at some point, I do want to say, on what basis are you basing these accusations? And if you don't have any hardcore evidence, then you need to just shuffle off the YouTube board and stop, because you're hurting people. You're keeping us unfocused. And at something like this, again, this is my feeling on it. I'm not Mormon. I know you're not. We're against what they teach, all that stuff. But do this then. If you have a problem with that aspect of the movie and who it's done by, just go see the movie. And if you want to walk away and blame everybody else because of their religious beliefs, you're free to do that. But please don't miss what this is about. This is about real children who are being, well, you know what's happening to them. So just try and stay focused, folks. And if you haven't seen the movie, don't talk about it.
Reading in the book of Jeremiah lately, God called Nebuchadnezzar his servant. Kind of crazy, right? So in the worst case scenario, God can use anybody, anything that he wants to bring about his will. And anyway, lots of things that we could have talked about, but we highly recommend check out this film. It's an important film. It is going to stir emotions, and I think that's a good thing. And if we get a remnant out of these people that have seen this film to move and to do something, that would be great. That would be amazing. God can do more with less, and we can see just great fruit come from this film. So anyway, folks, don't forget to check out Greg's website and all of the all the stuff coming up. Greg, do you have any other events coming up besides Go Therefore?
Possibly going to be in New York in October. We're looking at that, and also in Southern California in the first part of October. And the rest of the time, I'm just going to be locked down to my keyboard and with a chain on my hand, so I can't get away from the horrible process of editing this book. They'll just bring me a plate of food every once in a while so I can keep working on it. But yeah, not a lot of events out of the city right now. But that's why I'm really looking forward to the conference. I think there's going to be some very important connections for all of us at this conference, because we really are. It's go time for all of us. We're really coming down to the last days, and though somebody put where in Southern California we'll be at Covina Calvary Chapel. You might check with them. But yeah, it's go time. So this conference is going to be very important. If you still have room for it and somebody hasn't signed up yet, we'd love to see you out there. Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you, Tom, and all the people out there. It's going to be a great time.
Greg, thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. I was so troubled today, and you made it happen. And so good to hang out with you guys. Thank you again for giving us a thumbs up, for sharing the video, for subscribing, and I hope you guys just share this on social media, because we're trying to get some positivity out there about this, because there's a lot of hate that's just unfounded, in my opinion. Greg, hey, I will see you in a few weeks, my friend.
Absolutely.
And hopefully many of you out there, we got a show coming up this Thursday. Vicky Joy's coming back, and who knows what we're going to talk about, but God bless everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.